Electric organ?
Play ball.
Harpsichord. Yeah, that's true.
I feel like going on a merry-go-round.
I think we're...
Didn't know you got off.
I think we're circling around the music that we need, but
Another merry-go-round.
just still haven't quite nailed it. Anyway, look, hello and welcome to the Cars Guide Podcast, where we tear down, pressure test and rebuild the issues of the automotive week. I'm James, and with me are Cars Guide's fearless editor Mal.
G'day.
And long-time valued contributor Tim Robson.
Hey.
This week, among other things, we'll look at an automotive gender breakthrough, Mazda's concession to market forces, and the prospect of a monster payday for Danny Ricci. So stay with us. But first, Muskwatch. Okay, so first up, it's Elon's birthday today. And look, he turns 47, but like Peter Pan, I'm sure he intends never to grow up. And he this week has tweeted in response to the allegation that there was in fact a specific mode for the semi-trailer, like the prime mover, electric prime mover that he's making, Mad Max mode, and he tweeted saying it's real. So it's the blind spot threshold. Robbo, I think you spotted this, didn't you?
Absolutely, mate. It's another one of those either genius or flawed genius ideas from the fertile brain of Elon.
Yep.
You don't know whether it's a joke, you don't know whether it's real, but the essential idea behind it is that it'll monitor the blind spot and basically allow the truck to move when it indicates, but in a more aggressive way. So if it's mandated to give it a 50-metre clearance, I guess Mad Max will shut that down to a 5-metre clearance. I guess with cars that are electronically controlled, you could pretty much slot it into a gap that's a couple of centimetres.
So this is something that's out there in testing, and it's standard, aggressive, and Mad Max. So Tesla customers can't see it. It's in this truck. But it just kind of gives you an insight into the thinking of, you know, the dear leader Elon and his techs, that Mad Max mode is seen as something that's a positive. You know, thumbs up to that one.
I assume he's referring to Fury Road. That's the vision that pops into my head.
Well, I presume so. Yeah, that's right.
And so therefore, it's helping a truck to change lanes faster.
And more aggressively.
More aggressively.
Probably on fire.
How do you feel when you're beside a truck on the motorway?
Intimidated. And cautious.
Doesn't sound very wise.
No.
And if you think about too, right-hand drive, left-hand drive, assuming this thing gets made, assuming it actually gets outside the US, there's been instances in Europe where a left-hand drive car or a right-hand drive car coming against an alternatively seated truck will disappear in front of it.
Exactly. So it's, as usual, it's madness. And
you could say it's ludicrous.
Ludicrous mode.
No one's made that joke.
Okay, so the Semi, we've probably forgotten about that because it got kind of backgrounded by the whole Roadster thing. But there's a bunch of new models coming down, the Model Y, the Roadster, the Semi-trailer, all that stuff, and the pickup truck. So it's going to be a larger than Ford F-150 pickup. And Elon was on the Twitters again, you know, this week talking about how it's going to be this and that and so fantastic. So come on, followers, tell me what next level stuff you'd like to see on that truck. And some people actually took him seriously and came back with some suggestions. Others said they wanted, you know, solar power paint and rocket propulsion and lasers. And I thought that was all useful input. And one guy, Jerry Cutini, simply said, ship to customers on time.
Boom.
Bang.
Which is a perfect segue to your next point.
So it's a big, big week at the end of the second quarter of the year, end of the first half. And look, there was some chest beating, and Elon was determined that Model 3 production would get to, initially it was 5,000, but you'll probably recall if you're a regular listener, that he did say in an internal email that he'd go for a burst build number of 6,000 by the end of June. Now that's tomorrow. And according to the Bloomberg Model 3 production tracker, we're currently at 2,831, and that was off the back of 1,566 last week. And Matty Campbell did say they were probably keeping their powder dry to go for a big week this week to try and hit a number. And on the face of that, I think that's a fail as well. So really, there it is in black and white. Maybe next week will tell a different story, but I think that's a big F.
Even despite the presence of the big tent, James?
The big tent, the marquee. Yeah, the wedding marquee where...
Do you think they're still going to have people standing at the front of the gates waving candles? Maybe not candles, LED.
I don't know.
LED
torches.
candles.
I don't know. No idea. Anyway,
about it.
Look, It didn't happen. Matt Campbell was naysaying the whole way through. He's a great naysayer, and he's been proven right. So there you go. Prove us wrong, Elon, and build 6,000 in the coming week. We'd love to see it.
I can't wait till next week's podcast.
But speaking of big weeks, it's been a big week in Saudi Arabia, which is allegedly the last country in the world where women were actually forbidden from driving a car. So breakthrough of all breakthroughs, now they are. And to celebrate, there was a Saudi woman at Paul Ricard who on the morning of the Grand Prix last weekend drove a 2012 Renault. I think it was one that Kimi had won a race in somewhere or other. When he was driving for Renault around the circuit. And I just thought that was absolutely fantastic. What a great statement.
It's a brilliant PR stunt, but I would love to drive an F1 car, but I'm more than happy for her to this week.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're in touch with your feminine side. You could probably, to celebrate, why not?
Thank you, James.
Okay. But that's a great breakthrough. And now everyone in the world who has 2 arms, legs, and eyes to see with could drive a car if they get the opportunity. So it's good.
I can't believe we're still seeing this sort of thing within my lifetime, and I'm very young. Wow.
Well, I mean, for mine, there are some things that are cultural differences, and you just have to kind of shrug your shoulders and say, okay, you run your country and your culture in a different way. But there are some things that are more fundamental rights, to be able to move around, to do things that other people can do. So for mine, being able to drive a car is close to a fundamental right, and that's been put right during the week, which is a good thing.
It reminds me of that great fact of Liechtenstein being the last to let women vote in 1984.
84?
That was 84, and that sounds ridiculous.
And
but
that's
this
in
is driving a
Europe.
car in 2018.
Well, speaking of competition cars, as we just were, Volkswagen has absolutely crushed Pikes Peak with its ID.R electric car. And we all remember a few years ago, it seems like yesterday, but it was actually 5 years ago, when Sebastian Loeb went up there in the 208 T16 and destroyed the record. Well, this thing's gone 16 seconds faster than that. And if you know the climb dance video that Jean-Louis Marais made of Ari Vatanen chugging up there in 1988, that was 10 minutes 47. So he's best part of 3 minutes faster than Ari Vatanen during that vid.
Admittedly on a bitumen surface.
Yeah, true. But still.
So was Seb. Seb was
absolutely.
bitumen.
Yeah.
This is the key with the electric power propulsion system. It doesn't get affected by the altitude that the previous petrol powered and they even send diesel powered trucks up that hill.
Yeah.
But the closer you get to the top, the thinner the air, the lower the power, the slower the car goes. Electric car, no such problem.
And there's a laundry list of categories. Like they've got everything. You can be the fastest, whatever it is, up Pikes Peak.
Proper hill climb.
Yeah.
It is still considered one of those last great adventures. There's no barriers. There's nothing to stop you plunging to a very early death off a very large.
Well, the other thing was, I remember one of our colleagues, Jesse Taylor, telling me once when he went to Pikes Peak, he reckoned he could have probably hit the start line and just talked them into him letting him go up the hill in the Camry that he'd rented to get there. It wasn't particularly formal event.
Still grassroots.
Yeah, pretty grassroots.
The guy at the top still got the same woolen checkered flag jumper. Not flags, the jumper.
Right.
It's a checkered flag, and it's been a tradition for the last sort of 15 years.
It's Pikes Peak's drinking milk, is it? Can I say, do you remember Mitsubishi had a go at Pikes Peak with an electric car in, I think, 2012?
Yeah.
Where have they been?
Well, it's true. And you think about Monster Chijima with his, Suzuki.
Scudos.
Were they electric as well?
He tried one
a couple of his cars were.
He did try one a couple of years ago, had a few technical issues.
Because this Volkswagen looks like an absolute space vehicle. It's fantastic to look at.
And built in 8 months, would you believe?
Really?
They kind of had half an idea to get this thing done.
Right.
And they just fired out, obviously, on the back of the new electric movement from the Volkswagen.
Because it's about 500 kilowatts, which is less than the Peugeot that Sebastian Loeb drove, but it must weigh nothing.
But look at the form factor of it. It's so low to the ground.
True.
It's like not an aerial. What's a radical? It looks like a radical.
Yeah.
With a roof.
Around 1,200, around 1,100, 1,200 kilos.
1,100 or 1,200. Okay.
So much more streamlined than Seb's car.
Does 100 kilometres an hour in 2.2 seconds.
Fine.
Oh, that'll do. Now, I note the distance for Pikes Peak. 19.9 kilometres or thereabouts.
Yeah, and about 3,000 corners. Yep.
Was it 156? Anyway, lots.
It's lots.
There's something else that's about 20 kilometres long with 100 and something corners that I reckon they might be lining up for.
What's that?
Nürburgring.
Oh, with that car.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, okay, so, having a look over their shoulder at corporate siblings Porsche and what they're doing with their ex-Le Mans car and going, all right, we're going to have a go at you.
Unfortunately, I've seen a few things about that 918 that basically they stripped the weight out of, took all the restrictors off that Le Mans car to go as fast as it possibly could.
Yeah.
They're not going to do Nürburgring.
They're not?
That's the nail.
Maybe they're saving it
Bummer.
for this.
Well, I wonder if Pikes Peak is so long, and of course it is long, Nürburgring's longer, whether they run into battery issues and whether they run out of juice by the end of a lap,
Don't know.
Who
It
knows?
sounds like a calibration thing.
It would be fantastic. And also, you probably need to raise your ride height a little bit.
Yep.
Not exactly the smoothest.
I had a look. The existing electric ring record is 645.9, but it was a road car.
Wow.
The Chinese Neo EP9 last year.
Wow.
So given it's a road car, or
Yep.
sort of a road car, a lot more of a road car than the IDR,
Yes.
I reckon the IDR would romp home.
And Volkswagen suggests they could have gone faster. They had the car was a bit understeering, said Romain Demar.
Change the setup and they could go quicker.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And maybe put Chesto behind the wheel, maybe put Mal behind the wheel. We could probably eke out another 10, 15 seconds.
I reckon one of the things that might have been missing from that car, maybe as a weight-saving device, would have been the multimedia. But, of course, Mazda, and Mal, you're very close to this, has blinked. They've given in to market forces and feedback about their multimedia. Fill us in.
Okay, they announced this week at the CX-8 launch they are finally going to make CarPlay, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto available across their range later this year.
Yep.
It won't be standard, it'll be an option.
Yep.
It actually was fitted to the BT50 earlier this year and it's aftermarket head unit system, but they've now developed a setup that will work in conjunction with the excellent MZD Connect. It's a module that plugs into the back with a software update as well.
Right.
And you'll be able to fit it to older Mazdas
Retrofit.
too.
Great.
Any Mazda with MZD Connect, so anything from 2014-ish onwards.
Yep.
I just hope it doesn't cost $600 like BMW's optional CarPlay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as we've discussed previously, it was a bit of a surprise to me, I've got to say, that it's such a deal breaker for people in the new car market that, all of a sudden, if a car doesn't have that connectivity, off the shopping list.
Once you've
people
used it,
really
you
want to
don't wanna
have
go
their
back.
device seamlessly integrated into their car.
Why learn another interface if
Yep.
you don't need to?
Just a straw poll, gentlemen. The Android component of this wonderful technology. Big fan as you are of the CarPlay side. What about Android? I used it a couple of years ago. I just took the phone straight
Now,
off.
you're an
It was
Android user, aren't
disastrous.
you?
I am an
Yep.
Android user. My passion for CarPlay is really all about, reflecting our readers' interests.
Gotcha.
But Android Auto's improved a lot as well.
Yeah.
It's it's certainly better than the Honda system. It's better than a lot of others. It's still different to the interface on your phone, which is annoying. But for voice activation, it's pretty handy.
Fantastic.
Okay, Google, do this for me.
Well, look,
That simple.
talking about entertainment while you're driving, here are some words from an Aussie icon we all know and love, Winton.
2 words from Winton to the 2018 competition. You lose. More thunder this year from the Aussie legend that's taken the performance world by storm. It's a piece of street art honed in a tough neighbourhood, Bathurst. Aero efficiency holds the Winton Turbo down, but nothing holds it back. Talk of the devil, the upgraded Redback 2-stroke V9 Turbo now howls with even more power and is backed up by an even smoother evolution of Winton's own torque tumbler transmission. There's a Winton for every purpose except standing still, and you deserve a car this good. The 2018 Winton Turbo. One look says a lot, one drive says it all.
Information not based on facts. Allow 6 to 8 months for delivery. Not intended for highway use. Store in a cool, dry place. Actual results may vary. Do not use if seal is broken. Dry clean only. Keep frozen until ready to use. Remember to dial before you dig. Ah, yeah, the latest Winton Turbo. It is setting the market on fire. And
I think my pants are on fire.
oh yeah, look, if you're
just
going
had
to
a
drive that
crisis.
car, you want to make sure you're serious. But it poses the question, unfortunately, as usual. Where's Frosty? He's promised so many times that he'll be here. He was at the World Cup during the week. Unfortunately, an early exit for Australia. But the FIFA Winton relationship also proved problematic.
No,
in the
I thought there was a lock.
Look, Frosty wouldn't go into details, but he's got some big ideas for Saudi Arabia, and he's making a detour there on the way home. The Women of Winton is his big idea. Watch this space.
It's not a calendar, is it?
Frosty's promised to drop in. Promised, hand on heart, to drop in next week and fill us in on the details. Yep.
Excellent.
The Women of Winton. So in Saudi Arabia. It's fantastic. It's a great export story.
He's striking
for
while
Australia.
the iron's hot. Good on him.
Yeah, he is.
Absolutely.
Go Frosty.
Now,
Very
speaking
proactive.
of striking while the iron's hot, Robbo, you were telling us about the fact that VW and Ford will build trucks and vans together going forward. First of all, just give us the detail on that, and then how it might play into other relationships that are already existing or may come to pass in the future.
Look, in terms of volume, trucks are not that big in terms as the medium-sized pickup for most car companies isn't that big a market. To make it cheaper for themselves, they look to partner up with someone to make that cost more affordable. Let's look at the BT50 and Ford Rangers as a great example of shared cars. So Ford is now talking to Volkswagen, which leads to the thoughts of where's the next Amarok going to come from? Where's the next Ranger going to come from? At the end of the day, we are talking about two long chassis rails, an engine and a body plonked on top. It's not the greatest tech.
Because putting you on the spot, what is the future of the Ranger BT50 kind of thing? Does that have an end date on it at this point?
Well, I guess it'll run to the end of this generation. Of cars. And Isuzu has already signed up with Mazda to create the next BT50. So that's
Hence
that's
Ford
definite,
looking for a new dance partner.
And apparently that was that was old drinking buddies from back in the day in Japan.
Right.
They rang each other up, said, I think we should get together and let's reform the relationship between Mazda and Isuzu.
Gotcha.
Bob's your uncle, and that's how the next BT50 and D-Max will come about.
Yep.
So in terms of that, we've already seen things like Mercedes-Benz and Nissan. There's a correlation there. You'll probably see further again. You'll see things like the next Triton, Mitsubishi Triton, will come from the Nissan family because they're all part of that one big conglomerate
the Renault,
of people.
Nissan,
Correct.
Mitsubishi.
Absolutely. So it's all coming off the same. Mercedes, all coming off that same platform, and it's all just to reduce costs because you don't need to reinvent the wheel 14 times to make essentially the same.
As
vehicle.
you say, two rails, engine. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah,
It's not about Volkswagen trying to build an F-Series, is it?
There is talk of that. There was a large car that escapes my mind. It was launched in the New York show. At the New York show, they're doing
Atlas.
Atlas, yes, the biggest MQB
Great
platformed
name.
vehicle ever. And there was sort of talk around the campfire that a Ute will come out of that. Not expected to arrive in Australia because of the left-hand drive only. However, being MQB, which means it's a modular platform, never say never. I reckon you're right, Mel. There's definitely scope to look at that market in America, particularly. That's the one up from medium is massive, obviously.
And I imagine Volkswagen probably wants to get more territory in Southeast Asia, where Ranger and Triton
Always,
et cetera.
I'm led to believe that they sell more Golfs in a month than they sell Amaroks in a year as a company. So it's a very, very small concern for them, which is why they haven't really got curtain airbags in an Amarok. It's great in every other respect. Some of the safety just falls away. We have to wait for the next generation for that.
But
to
by
come
the same
through.
token, you never go broke making a profit. So even if the volume's smaller, if there's an opportunity there, seems it's worth exploiting.
Absolutely.
So understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now our very own Chesto has been working furiously over there in Italy and has filed a story that says essentially all these manufacturers are furiously chasing after electric propulsion and autonomous driving, yet there could be a major impediment, which is cost. That people won't want to buy these cars because in the initial phases anyway, they're just going to be too expensive. We're all used to that trickle-down effect where the high-tech stuff ends up in premium cars and kind of filters down. But all the chats about this is going to be for the mass market and you have a guy like Harold Vester from FCA saying, he's their chief technology officer now. He says you'd need 9 radars, 7 cameras, 5 LiDARs, 2 CPUs, onboard actuators and high-speed connection currently required to reach level 5 autonomy. And at an estimate, that's a minimum $30,000 extra, on the price of a mass market car. Right. So there's the cost figure, and there's also just people's appetite. Do they want to give over the wheel to the car and all of that?
And we all know, unless you're forced to go EV to drive into your city centre or something like that, who's going to bother?
Yeah,
particularly if it costs you. But I find it. I mean, this makes perfect sense to me because how many international motor shows have we been to, seen, heard, where all you see is autonomous electric concepts? We're not seeing much reach fruition yet, but we're told they will. But Can you remember the names of any of those concepts?
No.
Do they excite you?
But also, that is the big question.
ID Buzz, because it's a combi.
That's right.
It's almost a push marketing. You know, if we build enough of them and shove them out there into the network and make it the only thing you can buy, it's like flared pants in the 70s. You know, everyone wore flares because you couldn't buy anything else.
I think to Mal's point about legislating, if you don't actually tell people that they have to do it, they're not going to. It's such a big culture change to have an electric car, isn't it?
It fascinates me how the demand is nowhere near the investment. Like these are commercial entities.
Yeah.
And they're all plowing so much into doing this stuff, and no one's asking for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's 1% of Europe buys EVs and hybrids.
Well,
same as Australia.
Without wanting to sound flippant about it, I've been in press conferences where I felt like saying but didn't. You know, but have you asked anybody?
Yeah.
if they want these?
They're all kind of one-upping each other and trying to keep ahead of, expected legislation changes.
On the flip side, I remember the first time I drove a Mitsubishi iMUV, that tiny, tiny little thing. It cost a fortune, had nothing inside of it, and I drove it around where the CarsGuide offices are here in Surrey Hills, and I remember thinking, why does anybody need any more than this?
True.
Yeah.
It's an astonishingly perfect car for inner city dwelling. The world is becoming much more urbanised as we go forward, and car companies do have a history of long range thinking.
Yep.
So maybe there isn't demand currently, but when it does switch on, when governments get to that point with
they need to be ready. It's not a tap you can turn on.
Correct.
If the future is the BMW i3, I'm
Bring
all for
it
it. I love that little car, and we've said that ad nauseum. It's just such a pleasant vehicle to drive, and not just because of its drivetrain, because of the design around it. Yep. It's really clever and a really great place to be.
Yep.
So anyway,
and Elon's toys are a pile of fun.
they are a pile of fun.
Absolutely.
Lots of volts of fun.
No stockpiling there. They've got to get every car they can out to the customer.
Kilowatt hours of fun.
Stop it.
So a car that most definitely is not powered by an electric drivetrain and is most definitely driven by the person behind the wheel is Aston Martin's latest piece of hardware, which is by name the DBS Superleggera. So it's, a mega V12, stupid acceleration, $500,000. And look, the feedback on our video has been really interesting. We got an invitation to a bit of a sneak preview. It was launched simultaneously in various places around the world a few weeks before we got to go there, have a look. We made a little video, we've put it up. And the feedback's very interesting in that one person said, it just looks like every other Aston Martin that's been built in recent memory.
Has anyone ever complained about the look of Aston Martin?
That's the thing. I suppose that's all about a certain sameness. Another one saying it looks like a lazy shark just kind of going, fishing for krill on the way through the ocean, because the grill is enormous.
I reckon it looks like it's wearing a fencing mask.
Basking shark. And also someone else saying, why make a 2+2? Because it's a 2+2 GT.
Yeah.
Why not just make a 2-seat sports car and then make your Rapide, 4-door, and be serious about it?
I'll give you a tip. They're going to.
Yeah.
They're going to put the same stuff on the Vantage.
Yeah.
And it'll be the Vantage.
Yeah.
Used to be the way that the 911, the Porsche 911 was a 2+2 for tax reasons. They actually called the car a four-seater in
car.
terms of
in Germany.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
That was the reason. I don't know whether that still applies today.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a way to have more cars in your stable by having a 2+2, and then we'll have a
It's interesting too from a user point of view. I've spoken to people that own and have the opportunity to drive 911s, and they value those little seats in the back. That it does actually, particularly if you've got little kids, they can slip in there, and it becomes a useful feature.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Great spot for your picnic basket and such.
All that stuff. So, look, the other thing is our very own James Lyle did some digging this week, and we were talking about women finally having the right to drive a car in Saudi Arabia. And in the light of that, he found a book that has focused on what were called in the late 1950s GM's design damsels. So it was a group of women that Harley Earl had brought together to look primarily at interior design.
And this is the world's first design studio too.
It is the first styling studio. Yeah. So this is all about, they called it colour and styling and all of that stuff, the look and feel of the car. And this one person, her name, I will find it. Anyway, she basically came up with a head-up display. So this was high-tech coming out of aeronautics, and in 1958, a good 30 years before it ever saw light in a production car, she had a full rendering of how a strip speedometer could be reversed and reflected up onto the windscreen. And it went nowhere, essentially because much and all as Harley Earl was all for it, Bill Mitchell, who was the boss of the wash, said, no, I don't think so. I'm not for it. And it didn't go anywhere, but it just seems like such a shame.
It does seem incredibly... It's in terms of who spends a lot of time in cars, even today.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, who does the drop-offs at school, who does the shopping in the cars, not being sexist.
But you can actually...
In terms of general use, there would be a lot
and then it got squashed.
Oh, totally. And it was also, would have been, I mean, it feels like a breakthrough now, but it would have been such a breakthrough then for women in the automotive industry to be moving beyond what would be their kind of pigeonhole. Oh, yeah, you can do fabrics and you can do colours and you can do all that. To, well, actually, I've had an idea about how you might read the instruments up on the screen.
I think that might have been Susan Vanderbilt. That might be her name.
No, look,
No? Okay.
I'm going to keep going.
She's definitely one of the damsels, and she actually stayed on at GM for the next sort of 20, 25 years.
She might have been the one who the story I read.
Ruth
said
Glennie is her name. Ruth Glennie.
all but one of the damsels' careers were halted by Bill Mitchell.
Yeah,
So
right.
Susan
So
sounds
Susan
like the one.
managed to stay on for
Right.
it's
So
stay of
the sole-
execution.
I wonder what
Right.
Ruth went on to do.
I don't
Google that.
I don't know, but it seems like such a shame that there was that visionary
right.
thinking. Anyway, now it is time for a word from those gasoline-infused youngsters at Oversteer.
What happens when you put three hooligans together in one room? You get a podcast full of hectic banter.
Hummer is for any rugged man. This manly scent possesses
well,
a blend.
that rules me right out. Jeez.
Stupid stories.
It's a cruise ship with all the inside scooped out, water fills it up, and then you put a pirate ship in the middle. It's nothing more gangster than a ship in a ship.
You're an idiot.
And some discussion about cars.
So we've got the K cars as well. What do you guys think? There's this new Honda Sports concept there.
I think it looks so cool. It does look a bit funky, mate.
The Oversteer Podcast on the Cars Guide website, iTunes, and where all good podcasts are sold.
Great. Oversteer. Well, what can you say about them?
They can ramble, can't they?
Enthusiastic young chaps, aren't
Enthusiastic.
they? Love them.
Yeah.
Infused.
Infused with
I like the
gasoline
hats,
and
though.
liquids. All right. So, Robbo, you're with us. In a past life, you have edited various magazine titles and other online bits and pieces. One of them has been Auto Action.
Yes.
As the
Great
name
Auto
implies,
Action.
focused on motorsport.
Yes.
And you have tipped us off that we're in the middle of a triple header for Formula One, which, so I think we've gone France, we go Austria, and then Britain.
Correct. Yep.
And that just bubbles up a couple of F1 stories. So let's dig into those. Give
100%.
Give us the
So
word.
This is the first time that we've ever seen a triple header from the Formula One group. It's obviously under new owners now, a group called Liberty. They've really taken the sport post Bernie Ecclestone and shaken it up good and proper. Social media from the drivers, social media from all the teams. It's really brought the sport to life. And I think having 3 races in a row will really bring it up to prominence in the world of the media that goes so fast.
Yep.
They've had some controversies over the time. They had the woman model that waved the flag a lap too early in Canada a few weeks ago.
Right.
It went around the world. And she was told to wave the flag. And the interesting thing was is that as soon as that flag waves, whether it's the model,
the end
whether
of the
it's
race.
the thing, that they've got to count back a lap. So Daniel Ricciardo had the fastest lap of the race until that moment. He got it taken away and handed to his teammate Max
I
Verstappen
see.
because the
I
official
see.
results
Wow.
say that's when the race had
It's
to
the
end.
Trevor Chappell moment of
It
Formula
is
One.
Maybe.
very much.
Yeah.
It was very funny.
But talking of Danny Ricky,
Yes.
he's a marked man in all the best possible ways because
man of the moment.
he's been so consistently fast. He's a proven race winner. He's great in front of a camera. Brilliant on the social media, and you just mentioned that. He's the whole package.
Best smile in sport.
Yeah, he's just a great ambassador for motorsport and for Australia and all that stuff. So a lot of teams would love to have him.
Yes.
And Red Bull has just made the decision to move from Renault power to a factory Honda engine deal.
Yep.
And Honda hasn't been setting the world on fire. But what's his possible? There's a potential next step here, Robbo.
There was a lot of talk around the last race in France. Names like Renault came into the fore as a possible option for Daniel. Ferrari has been linked with. He's even signed some sort of prenup deal with the guys, which has lapsed in the last few days.
Right.
So I would make the assumption that he's not
going there.
Not going to Maranello next year.
Yep.
Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas is off contract at the end of the year. My guess is that Lewis Hamilton is like, no, thank you.
No,
I don't really want that guy
him
in my
next to me.
team. Staying put is definitely an option. That Honda has gone into the Toro Rosso cars, the sister team of Red Bull, and has done quite well. Part of the problem with McLaren was they were very restrictive about what Honda could do with their bodywork.
Right.
If they were allowed to have a little bit more room for cooling and things like this, they might have done a better job.
I see.
So it's actually quite an interesting backstory. Everybody was caning Honda. Perhaps McLaren were as much at fault with not making that package work.
The carrot that McLaren is dangling is a large payday.
Correct. The rumours are $20 million US per season.
Per season.
Is that coming from a particular sponsor?
McLaren it's interesting to find out where that money would come from. Would it come from the car side of the business? They have got nothing down the side of the car, have they? They run a pretty lean ship when it comes to sponsorship side on Formula One.
Is there, to your knowledge, putting you on the spot, is there still some tobacco money in the background of Ferrari?
I think whether it is this year, the colour red is actually a Marlboro colour. You're not allowed to say the word Marlboro, you're not allowed to breathe the word Marlboro, but there is still tobacco money being funneled into the
Because even when the stickers were off the car,
Correct.
they were still
The shade
Marlboro,
of red.
Scuderia, Ferrari,
All
or
that
their
kind of
official
stuff.
name
Yep.
still had it in it for a while.
Yeah, it did.
How on earth do they charge Marlboro for that? It's not like Ferrari's going to go, well,
Association.
not
That's such
paying,
a-
we're going to be black this year.
I don't know.
I suppose you're looking at the association over decades of sponsorship that the car is still red. I mean, that's what cigarette companies have to get. That's the level they have to stoop to now.
But they'd be red anyway, it's Ferrari.
Maybe. And look, I think
That'd be an
Daniel
interesting conversation. to deal.
gave Red Bull a commitment that I will tell you by September or something like that.
Coming
So-
very close. I think by the time that the circus gets to Britain,
Oh, really?
I reckon
Okay.
we might get an answer out of that.
And one guy who didn't have a great experience or is not having a great experience, he's been there twice at McLaren, is two-time world champion Fernando Alonso.
Correct.
And he just seems to zig when he should zag. And in glorious hindsight, a lot of his decisions have been tragic because the team that he departs comes good.
Yes.
The one he goes to falls in a hole.
Yes.
And, you know, he may want to just go racing and win races like he just won Le Mans
Yes.
and get that winning feeling. And there's a rumour that he might be going outside of F1.
So the rumour is very solid and firming up day by day that he'll leave Formula One at the end of the season to go IndyCar racing. The basic premise behind that is he wants to be only the second person in history to be the winner of the triumvirate of great races, Le Mans, Monaco,
And Indy 500.
and Indy 500.
Yep.
So he did the Indy 500 last year with just a cavalcade of media attention upon him. He led the race with Andretti Motorsport for quite a length of time until an engine failure took him out. As you say, won Le Mans at his first attempt, and then he comes back to Formula One and wobbles around in 14th. He's on the radio saying, "I've got no brakes, I've got no tyres, I really don't care."
Yeah.
What a come down. So the owner of McLaren, or the guy who runs McLaren, Zach Brown's very interested to keep him happy.
In the family
Correct.
somehow.
So McLaren does have a history of IndyCar racing. We also hear rumours that Scott Dixon, the New Zealand driver who does very, very well in IndyCar racing, has been linked to that McLaren squad as well.
Wow,
So
really?
it could
Wouldn't
be-
that be amazing? Because Scott Dixon's been in IndyCar for so long.
He has, and he is still an absolute gun. I think he
Wow.
came third at Road America on the weekend, so he's still right up there
Right
in the
there.
hunt. Obviously, Will Power is an Australian Queenslander who won the Indy 500.
Yeah.
So there's still a lot of antipathy and interest in IndyCar racing.
And then Alonso.
And then Fernando, he will
Also
just.
excited about him.
IndyCar is on the up. It had open wheel racing in the States has been really problematic. It's split itself in half over the last couple of decades. It's on a roll.
Yeah,
it's
good.
absolutely on a roll.
They've just got to make the cars look a little less bumper car from the amusement
And they
park.
have. If
They
you
have?
have a look at this
Okay.
year, mate. They have taken a lot of that fender stuff off the cars.
Right.
They look like pucker, old school,
Terrific.
really cool.
That's ideal.
Not a lot of aero stuff on them. They good
Right.
hard
It
racing.
says a lot that we don't know that, and it's July.
Well, look, on that motorsport note, I think we have indeed reached the finish line. I would like to say thank you, Mel.
Thank you,
It
James.
was great to have you here, Robbo.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you indeed. And thanks to our producer, Marsden.
Thank you.
For his,
And you.
his stoic but actually unpredictable work behind the scenes. In fact, his personality is split so many ways, he goes to group therapy on his own.
He's sporting a very stylish haircut this week.
And thank you for listening. And please give us your thoughts on anything we've discussed today. Tell us how stupid we are. You know, we don't know it all. You know more than we do on any given subject. So don't bottle it up. Let us know. Search for Cars Guide on Facebook and Instagram and use the hashtag CG Podcast, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. You can listen to and watch us on YouTube. And if you're an iTunes devotee, please rate and review us. I hope you can join us next week. Until then, a Kia Picanto pulls up next to a Rolls-Royce Ghost at the lights. "Do you have a drinks cabinet in there?" the Kia driver asked the man in the Rolls. "Of course I do," comes the pompous reply. "Do you have widescreen video?" The Rolls driver sighs. "Yes, I have that too." "Do you have a double bed in the back?" the Picanto driver wants to know. Frustrated, the Rolls driver speeds off and that afternoon has a double bed installed in his car. The next day, the Rolls driver passes the same Picanto parked on the side of the road with its windows fogged up and steam pouring out of it. The triumphant driver pulls over, gets out of the Rolls and bangs on the Picanto's window. "I want you to know I've had a double bed installed," he brags. The Picanto driver rolls his window down, frowns at the Rolls driver and says, "You got me out of the shower to tell me that."
I was waiting for a CarPlay joke. Picanto.
Chapow, nice one.
Wow. Very tidy.
Cool.
Subscribe.